Good evening, and welcome to the Readiness Report. I'm reporting to you live on Flames of War Berlin, a book I am finally excited to see released. This book, in particular, does not have some gimmicky half-track I don't want to buy. Instead, it focuses on the late war fight between the Germans and the Russians, and I finally get to use my IS-2 battalion. Wait a minute. I'm getting a report from my senior Warhammer correspondent, Niall. Niall, can you hear me?
Good evening, Jacob. In an event that some people are calling fantaside, apparently Games Workshop has killed Warhammer Fantasy.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it seems that they've declared that they're no longer supporting 8th edition or any of its books, and they've replaced the game with a game called Age of Sigmar, a game that plays exactly nothing like Warhammer Fantasy.
Can you give us any more information?
Well, the info is a bit sketchy right now, but we'll let you know as it develops.
Well, you heard it here first, folks, on the Readiness Report.
So, if you've seen our Nagash video, you may have gathered that we here at the Readiness Report are pretty big fans of Warhammer Fantasy, I'd say. It's definitely one of my favorite games. And there's some pretty big news coming out from Games Workshop about it. So, they've replaced the game with game Age of Sigmar. And this is what we know so far, is that according to Games Workshop themselves, our account rep at the store has told us that they're no longer supporting 8th edition. The rule books are discontinued. The army books, the end times books are discontinued.
The miniatures are not.
The miniatures are sticking around. However, they are going to start packaging the miniatures with round and oval bases instead of square and rectangular bases.
Now, why is that?
Well, we'll get into that when we get into the rules in a little bit.
Okay.
But those are the big things that are changing as far as just the product line is concerned. The only SKUs that they're discontinuing are the books. They're keeping around all the miniatures. All of your old miniatures that you've had since the dawn of time, all my miniatures from that old Milton Bradley game that I still use in my Empire army.
I still have some of those dwarves.
Yeah, I mean, some of the old stuff is still perfectly fine. But the big thing is the Big Red Book, as it's come to be affectionately called.
I call it the Bible, but
has been discontinued. All the army books are discontinued, so if there's any of those you want, I'd recommend snagging them up while you still can. And that's, pretty big news, I'd say.
Yeah.
From Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And we can really only speculate on why they did this. It can be pretty well assumed, though, it's a result of the sales of Warhammer Fantasy stagnating.
Yeah, the last couple of years it's been really dropping off.
So, I get that they needed to do something, but the big question that everyone's been asking, at least I've heard from multiple people, and not just gamers either, is why not have both games?
Yeah, why cut Warhammer off completely?
Yeah, why don't you have Warhammer Age of Sigmar as an intro game, and as people, get more and more miniatures, they can build up into Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the question that I've heard most commonly asked about this whole situation.
Yeah.
So as far as the rules go for Age of Sigmar, we do have a copy of the rules here that you can pick up in White Dwarf 75. If there's still any available from your friendly local game store. Yeah. We have the rules here. All 4 pages of them. There is literally more rules for the Star Wars miniatures game from Wizards of the Coast than there are for the current Warhammer game. This, can be pretty astonishing if you're like me, used to books like this, or, books of similar size for Warhammer 40k. Even the Mordheim book was probably about half this thick.
So what can you tell us about the rules?
So, as far as the basic mechanics work, there's no more weapon skill, ballistic skill, any of that. The way the stat lines are is every unit has their weapons, and the weapon stats will tell you what you need to roll to hit your opponent, regardless of their skill. What you need to roll to wound your opponent, regardless of their skill. And there will be a rend value, which will be from 0 on down into the negatives that take armor values off. So, if you have a rend -1, your opponent has a save of 5, then they'll need to roll 6s to save. The game is done in a series of stages. The hero...
You'll be familiar with it.
Yeah, there's the hero phase, which is when you do your magic, your special abilities, things like that. There's the movement phase. Obviously, you move your miniatures. The shooting phase, pull out your handguns and your crossbows and shoot each other. Then there's the charge phase. That's when you roll dice to see if you can cover the charge distance and make contact with the opponent.
Similar to Warhammer. That's a couple of components that are similar.
In a way, in a different order. Charging was still done in the movement before.
Right, you rolled for it and then it happened.
But and it was the first part of the movement phase before. Now it comes after shooting.
It feels very much like 40k now.
In a way, it's played as a skirmish game. There's 1 inch instead of 2 inch coherency. But then there's the combat phase, which is when you actually roll dice to damage your opponent in melee. Then there is the battle shock phase. I always have to look that one up because I can never remember what that one's called.
Battle shock.
So after combat, what you do is for every model you lost in combat, you roll a die and add that number to it. And whatever number that is over, or whatever you go over your leadership value, now called bravery. Thank you. I'm getting used to the new terminology still.
Yeah, it's similar mechanically.
Right. So whatever you go over your bravery skill by, you take that many wounds to the unit. So undead have bravery 10 because they're not afraid of anything. Humans, I believe, have a bravery of 6, I think is the standard human now. And then 7 or 8 for their heroes, things like that. Now there's a set of generic magic that all wizards get in addition to whatever they get special. Some generic command abilities that all heroes get in addition to whatever they have in particular. But I mean, really, folks, this is all the rules. Is all 4 pages of it. If you didn't pick up the White Dwarf 75 that this came in, this will also be coming in the new starter box, as well as be a printable PDF from the Games Workshop website. And I mean, this is basically it. Those are the basic mechanics of the game. Obviously, there's more special abilities in there that do various things that you can use to mix up the game. Now they have keywords, so every unit, the Empire units have keywords of order, humans, the spearmen and stuff will have state troops. And so there will be abilities that affect all, order human units and things like that.
It feels like magic components.
It's not...
It's a little dissimilar to Magic.
It's not completely dissimilar to Magic the Gathering in that way. And it's an interesting way to take the game. But as far as those rules go, we pushed it around a bit.
Really fast.
It is really fast. And as a result of it being really fast, it kind of left me unsatisfied. We busted through a game pretty quick.
Probably half hour?
Yeah, and it left me feeling like nothing really happened. It used to be you sit down, play a couple thousand points of fantasy, and you get to the end, you're like, that was a meaty game. There was a lot of, intense interaction. And I mean, granted, we didn't play a particularly large game, but it just felt like it was missing something,
Speaking of points.
Hold on, we'll get to that in a minute. That's a whole another tangent I have for you. But back to the thing with the bases. So the reason there's stuff coming on round bases now is bases don't matter. You don't measure base to base anymore. You measure nearest point of the figure to nearest point of the figure.
So you're saying if my guy has a sword hanging out, you measure from his sword?
Correct. Whatever part of the miniature is closest to the enemy. The base is to, quote, stand the model up and make it look pretty. That is exactly what our account rep told me. And so that's why they're telling people you don't need to rebase your Warhammer Fantasy armies. And that's why they're coming with round bases now instead. If that's, how they're going to do it, we'll see. It was weird in that when we were playing, I had some free company guys had some spears around, and because their spears were sticking out, those spears stuck between the enemy models, and I got extra guys into the attack as a result.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because I can't think of any other miniatures game that's ever done that. It's always been base to base and everything. It might be edge of base to edge of base, or center of base to
War
center
Machine
of base.
is a little different.
Well, yes and no. War Machine's still edge of base to edge of base in War Machine, though. But you're still measuring to the base. Mm-hmm. This is the only game that I've ever encountered that you measure to the model, except for, I guess, the bugs in Starship Troopers.
I missed that game.
That being said, they're telling people, you don't have to rebase your Warhammer Fantasy armies, or you're perfectly fine to continue using them on square bases. And also, technically, you can start using all kinds of crazy, wonky bases if you want. If you want to put your zombies on 30mm bases, go for it, because bases don't matter. So, I think it'll take a little more playing to kind of feel that one out to see if it's a good thing or not. I'm not a big fan of it, because the nature of Warhammer models, especially going forward, they've mentioned how part of the reason they're doing circular bases is they plan on coming out with more dynamic, heroic poses on all their figures, and as a result, you're going to have these awkwardly shaped figures that, you're measuring from a hammer outstretched like that rather than to the center of the figure.
Yeah, gone are the regiments.
That's for sure. Also, like you said earlier, gone are army points. So there are no points in this game. No points costs for any of the units. You can look all you want, Jake. You won't find them on there. Here's how army building works. You and your opponent sit down and alternate putting out figures on the table until you go, that's good, I'm good with that. Or you literally run out of room. So there's rules for balancing it if you're outnumbered. However,
what's to stop me from showing up with Nagash and his lieutenants? And that's my army.
Threat of physical violence from your opponent.
Okay.
That's basically it. The idea that Games Workshop has is that you and your opponent aren't going to sit down and be jerks about it. That you and I can sit down and go, okay, you took, 20 dwarf warriors and a thane and some miners, and I took 20 spearmen or what have you, and some great swords and a captain of the empire, and we could kind of figure that those are about even.
Yeah. However, okay, so there's no inherent balance.
Right. However, the problem with that method, as we found out earlier, is that it's going to be very difficult to determine what's balanced. The game we did, I put out 10 great swords versus 10 graveguard, 20 free company versus 20 skeleton warriors, and then a vampire lord versus my captain of the empire, or general of the empire. And
you kind of got pasted.
I got wiped out. It was bad, and I had the first attack.
You piled in.
I had shooting before I even went in, and I did a bad amount I did a lot of damage to that unit of graveguard, and I still had the floor wiped with me. So it's going to take a lot of tweaking to balance the game, and also speaking of that, there's some rules in the game that are also inherently imbalanced. There's, as a result of them, I'm guessing, trying to be funny in a very kind of Deadpool way. So, as a dwarf player, if you're fielding Longbeards, and these are just a few of the instances I've found while just glancing through the War Scrolls. If you're playing Longbeards and you complain about something in a suitably dwarven way, complain about the price of beer or something, as they give an example of,
it's getting too expensive.
Then the Longbeards start grumbling as well, and they get a bonus. If you're playing at nighttime or you can't see daylight, as the vampire counts, Manfred von Karsting gets a bonus. If you talk to Conrad von Karstein during the hero phase, he gets a bonus. And get this, if he talks back to you, he gets an additional bonus.
Okay, cool. Kind of breaking the fourth wall there.
Yeah, but the problem is that's inherently unbalanced as far as any sort of competitive play goes. So you and I can sit down as friends and play this game. However, if, as another friend of ours goes, I'm going to kick your whatever at this game, and you sit down and play it, you can't really determine who the real winner is because you have no way of knowing if it was a fair fight, really.
Interesting.
Yeah, also out the window are army composition rules. There's no more minimum number of core, maximum number of rare. I can show up with 18 great cannons for the Empire if I wanted to. I believe the only limitation is you cannot have multiples of named characters. So, if you wanted to show up with 27 Thanes against me, you could. Or Dwarf Lords. I don't know if Thanes are even still in the game. I haven't looked fully through the Dwarven War Scroll. And also, you can mix and match.
Allegiances are sort of gone.
Yes. So, I gotta say, personally, not a big fan of this game. I played it, like I said, it felt me leaving wanting. I felt like there wasn't enough content to our game. Mm-hmm. Even for a small game, it felt very much like
too quick.
It was too quick.
Yeah, because watching it, I was just like, oh, you guys have gone through another turn. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily need the extreme in-depth, however many hundreds of pages of rule book. But that being said, 4 pages to play a game that for 30 years has been, over 80 at least, I think, at its smallest.
Even a miniature.
Yeah, it just feels really wrong to me, personally. And again,
this is just the intro. There's supposedly more coming.
According to White Dwarf 75, there will be more coming, and we'll see how it plays out. But as far as right now, how things are at the moment, personally don't really care for it. We'll see how things go. I'll probably continue playing 8th edition. I have the rules. It's not like the books are gonna burst into flames when the new starter set comes out or anything.
Yeah, no. I'm curious. I like these new miniatures. I really do.
But not in the setting of Warhammer Fantasy.
No, we've talked about this to great length. They are very pretty, just like any Citadel miniature that's come out lately, but they just don't have the feeling of fantasy. They feel very much like Sanguinary Guard.
Yeah, the Sanguinary Guard units from the Blood Angels with their molded muscle armor with the nipples in it, like Batman, like the George Clooney Batman.
And the wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do like the miniatures, but
just not in the setting of Warhammer.
Yeah, it feels out of place. I want to read the fluff. This new starter is kind of on the expensive side for the amount of figures, but I'm curious on it. If it's good, it's good, and I want it to be good.
Yeah. And speaking of the fluff, so there will be a book in the starter set that's just nothing but fluff to explain what's going on in the story. But some of the fluff was revealed in White Dwarf 75. So there's now 9 planes of existence, 1 for each lore of magic, and then 1 for chaos. And they're ruled over by whoever the master of that particular lore is. The realm of metal is ruled over by Balthasar Gelt, the Supreme Patriarch. The realm of death is ruled over by Nagash, of course. And then chaos, they have their realm, and they're creeping into the other realms.
That's a big no-no.
Yeah. So, Sigmar, the God Emperor of Mankind, who some of you may know better as Talos if you've played a lot of Skyrim, because he's totally the same character. He's had enough of this. And so he and his army of immortals, Stormcast Eternals,
yes.
I stumble over that name all the time. They're coming down, he's had enough, he's sending his army out, and that's kind of the start of Age of Sigmar, is the start of his war against chaos.
And apparently he's been planning this for a long time.
Right. So what happens is all the Stormcast Eternals, they're great warriors from throughout time, and when they've died, they've Sigmar has pulled them up into the heavens, into essentially what is Valhalla, reforged them into these massive, mighty warriors that are significantly larger than normal man. They have crazy space armor forged from Sigmarite, the metal hewn from the world that was, I'm guessing the old world is what that's referring to. And then the Stormcast Eternals ride the lightning down to the plains and crash into it to fight chaos. Because they're apparently space marines.
This is what you read?
So, to summarize the fluff, the immortal god emperor of mankind doesn't like chaos, and he uses his army of super soldiers in their special magic armor to fight against chaos.
I feel like I've heard this story before.
Probably have, because it's Warhammer 40,000.
Okay.
So we might find out more when we can get our hands on the fluff book. But as it stands right now, that's essentially what we know about the fluff of Warhammer Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, the lead up, like, the end times I liked it. It was like this really big lead up. There was
a lot of cool stuff.
Huge amounts of things happening, and I just feel like they took a wrong turn.
We don't know if it's
maybe it's a detour.
It's a weird turn, is what it is.
Yeah.
And as things play out more, again, we don't have all the facts yet. The starter set's not even out yet. What we have to go on is what's in White Dwarf 75.
Yeah, and it does say there's more coming.
Right. They do mention that there's more to this. There will be more coming, more books or whatever. Hopefully more than 4 pages of rules. Maybe even some point values for the units.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe this is just the intro to use with the figures you have right now until they get new rules.
I'm just dumbfounded by the fact that this is a Games Workshop rulebook right here.
You're kind of angry, aren't you?
I'm a little bit upset.
I'm sorry.
So the army construction rules being what they are is going to allow for some more interesting builds. Be able to take whatever you want. So what's something you would consider fielding, Jake?
Well, I'm a dwarf player through and through, so I'd take probably 20 warriors.
Okay. Yeah, good block to base your army off.
Yeah, hammers, because I like protecting my king. Probably some handgunners. I always like range stuff. How about you?
I always, me, I like fielding the Emperor. He's a cool, badass dude. So I'll probably start with the Emperor. Take, say, 20 free company. I always like my free company.
Yeah,
I have a lot
painted awesome.
Yeah, I've painted up quite a bit of them, so I'd take them. I always preferred free company over state troops. And speaking of state troops, I'd probably take, say, 30 spearmen. Big block of spearmen, big group of spearmen. And since you can make any general in your or any figure in your army the general, I was thinking of Spearman 12.
Instead of Carl.
Spearman 12.
Okay.
And what about our director Nolan? He also plays Warhammer Fantasy.
So my largest army is Undead, and I've been playing that since I started playing Warhammer 20 years ago.
4th edition.
Yeah, a long time ago. So I start with a vampire.
Yeah.
Vampire Lord.
Yeah, of course.
Makes sense.
And I've always liked having, especially for the Undead, having a little extra magic for summoning more stuff, which they made a lot easier in this. So throw in a Necromancer.
Right, yeah.
And let's go big block of skeletons, 40 skeletons.
40 skeletons.
40 skeletons. Some Graveguard.
Always Graveguard.
Always Graveguard. And some Black Knights.
And Vargeist.
And a Vargeist. Good suggestion. Vargeist.
I always like those figures.
Always good.
Alright. So, in addition to the fact that you take anything from your army, you can also take anything from anyone else's army now. So, what's some more interesting things that you would consider doing?
I would try to take... You have a dragon. You would let me borrow that.
Oh, of course, Jake. We're friends.
Okay. How about Carl Franz? I like Carl Franz.
As long as you don't mistreat him.
Oh, never.
All right. So Carl Franz on the dragon. Of course, according to the War Scroll, he's just treated as Carl Franz of Deathclaw, right?
Really?
Yeah, it's a little disappointing. There's no more Imperial Dragon. But it says specifically in there to treat him as Carl Franz of Deathclaw.
Okay.
I mean, you can still use the figure. It's still cool looking.
Okay. I guess. How about you?
Let's see. Some more interesting builds. Let's see. I've always been a big fan of Vampire Counts. I probably would have played it if it wasn't for the fact my brother beat me to it by many years.
A few years.
Yeah, more than a few years. So I'd probably swipe some of his stuff. So let's start off with Vampire Lord.
Okay.
And there's a kind of a tentative agreement between Undead and Order in this that Chaos is the bigger threat, so this could work. So, and then we also do, let's say, 15 skeletons, 20 zombies, an Empire Great Cannon.
Okay.
And
You look Cav too, don't you?
it's a good point. Let's take 12 Knightly Orders.
Cool.
All right, 12 Empire Knights too. You have something more interesting, Nolan?
Let's see. Well, let's take a General of the Empire.
Okay.
10 Skaven Warriors.
Okay. Not sure what you're going to accomplish with 10, but we'll roll with it.
Yeah, whatever. And a Rat Ogre.
Oh, yeah, Rat Ogres are cool.
Big ugly thing.
And 10 Dark Elf Corsairs.
That's an interesting mix. So something also that I'd kind of like to try. So, I take my spearmen and free company from that other army, and let's throw in a unit of zombies. Say 15 zombies.
Okay.
But since base size doesn't matter, I'm going to mount one of those zombies on one of the big oval bases that they use for flyers in 40k, so that all the other zombies can stand on his base and just move the whole thing as one unit.
Okay. Interesting.
And I've always been a big fan of the lore of Nagash and his story and everything, so I'll take Nagash too.
Okay.
You got something else, Nolan?
Yeah, so I was thinking I too would take Nagash, but since, like you said, base size doesn't matter, I'm going to take the old one.
Okay.
Okay.
And let's also add a dragon. Zombie dragon.
Zombie dragon, of
Zombie
course.
dragon, yeah.
All right.
I like flyers. Could I take a Valkyrie?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Okay.
Let's see. I'm thinking let's take 15 spearmen and the Batmobile. And
good choice.
Let's see. A catapult battle mech.
Interesting. How about you, Nolan? Any other thoughts?
Let's see. I want to take 20 free company,
Okay.
a Dwarf Slayer,
All right.
Okay.
10 Imperial Stormtroopers, and 10 Imperial Stormtroopers.
Interesting.
Let's see. How's about let's do 20 skeletons. And let's throw in Carl Franz on a cold one. 10 zombies. A Tiger tank. And a penitent engine.
Realistically, I think I'd take like 20 Dwarf Warriors, but I have like gun lines, so I'd probably take a lot of handgunners, probably a Riptide, and a Victory class Star Destroyer.
All right, good call.
Can I take a Dreadnought?
Sure, I don't care. Just go for it.
Okay.
So a Dreadnought
And Lehman Russ.
and a Lehman Russ.
I gotta get the Lehman Russ in there.
Okay. So, that's the new Warhammer, Age of Sigmar. We're gonna see how this goes. At the moment,
Yeah.
not entirely thrilled with it. It's not necessarily that it's a bad game. It's that I like Warhammer Fantasy. I like the rank and file, the regimented units, the throwing out 200 figures on the table and doing this, these epic battles. You got wizards and war machines and all this cool stuff going on, and it felt massive. Felt like a big deal. And you can get big battles in this game, but the game itself doesn't lend itself that well to it, I think.
I don't know. Having not seen everything, I think this might be a good intro for some players. That me and you have been playing war games for a long time. Maybe that's why we feel so strongly. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. It felt very much so like an introductory miniatures game, not dissimilar to the Wizards of the Coast Star Wars game in simplicity. And we'll see where this goes. Like I said, right now I'm not entirely pleased with it, but that's because to me it's not what I want from the setting and from the game. Like I said, it very well could end up being that as things kind of flush themselves out, we kind of see how things balance better. It might be a great game.
Or we get books and they add
Right.
more.
That being said, it's still it's not what I want from the game. I want the mass rank combat that is Warhammer Fantasy, and has been Warhammer Fantasy for 30 years. That's what I want from the game, and Age of Sigmar doesn't deliver that, and that's really my biggest complaint about it. And I just fail to see the reasoning behind getting rid of 8th edition, and why you don't just have both simultaneously.
This is kind of just a separate entity that you can have for Warhammer Fantasy and have Warhammer Fantasy itself.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the big confusing thing why they didn't do that. So like I said, we'll see how this goes. It might be, we might be looking back at this in a few weeks and go,
I was wrong.
Man, we were wrong about that. This game is great. Who knows? And like I said, it's not necessarily a bad game, just not what I wanted. Well, if you like that video and you'd like to see us do an unboxing next week of the new starter set, be sure to click subscribe below and be caught up to date on when those videos release. Also, be sure to check us out on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at @ShopOfMagic, and check us out on G+. I'd probably go with 2 platoons of regular IG infantry, a couple of Lehman Russes, a squad of stormtroopers, and let's throw in a veteran squad and a Chimera.
That's just your Imperial Guard army.
So, there's no rules in this game. Nothing matters anymore.